The aliens in ancient civilization. The question that refuses to fade. What if the strangest stories from the ancient world were never about visitors from the stars? What if they were about humans, standing at the edge of understanding, trying to explain a world that felt too large, too powerful, and too mysterious to control? This question has followed humanity for thousands of years. It whispers through ruins, carvings, and forgotten texts. And no matter how many times it is answered, it never truly disappears. The chamber beneath the sand, deep beneath the desert floor, a stone door slowly opened for the first time in centuries. Dust filled the air as light entered a space untouched by the modern world. There were no treasures inside, no gold, no jewels, only walls covered in carvings. Figures unlike anything expected. Tall shapes, rounded heads, long, narrow eyes, lines reaching downward, as if connecting earth to sky. Silence filled the chamber. Someone spoke the word that history has learned to fear. Aliens. First impressions in modern eyes. To modern observers, the images felt familiar. They echoed science fiction. They resembled ideas shaped by rockets, satellites, and space travel. But first impressions can be misleading, because ancient art was never meant to be seen through modern eyes. It was meant to speak to people who lived in a completely different world. A sky without science, before machines, before electricity, before flight. The sky ruled human life. The sun controlled survival. The moon shaped calendars. Stars moved with precision no one could explain. To ancient people, the sky was alive. When lightning struck, they saw emotion. When eclipses came, they felt fear. When comets appeared, they believed something important was happening. They did not have science. So they created meaning. Stories as survival tools. Stories were not entertainment. They were explanations. They turned chaos into order. They helped people survive floods, famine, and disease. When something changed life for the better, new farming methods, laws, or tools, it felt impossible that humans alone had created them. So the answer came from above, not as visitors, but as gods. Sumer and the Anunnaki. In ancient Sumer, the world's first cities rose between two rivers. Their clay tablets spoke of powerful beings called the Anunnaki. These beings taught laws. They guided kings. They shaped civilization. But the tablets never described machines. They never described distant planets. They described gods, part of a spiritual worldview, not a technological one. Egypt and the language of the sun. In Egypt, pyramids rose with astonishing precision. They aligned with stars. They pointed toward the heavens. Art showed gods traveling across the sky in glowing boats. Modern viewers imagined spacecraft. Ancient Egyptians saw the sun's journey. The sky was sacred, not mechanical. Symbolism, not technology, was their language. Mesoamerica and misunderstood images. In Mesoamerica, Maya carvings showed rulers surrounded by symbols and motion. One image became famous for looking like a man flying. Some called it a rocket. The Maya called it rebirth, death, and renewal. A journey of the soul, not the body. The meaning was spiritual, not physical. A global pattern. India described flying chariots. China told stories of dragons descending from clouds. African traditions spoke of teachers who came from the sky. Every culture asked the same question: where does knowledge come from? The answer was not visitors. It was survival. When people did not yet trust human ability, they placed wisdom in the heavens. The modern shift, then something changed. Humans learned to fly. They split atoms. They walked on the moon. Suddenly, ancient stories sounded familiar. Not because the ancients knew the future, but because modern humans projected their own technology backward. The ancient alien idea was born from doubt. Doubt that ancient people were capable. Archaeology pushes back. Archaeology tells a different story. Workers' villages near pyramids. Tools beside massive stones. Skeletons showing healed injuries. Proof of care and community. These were not miracles. They were achievements. Human achievements. Built through planning, cooperation, and time. The symbols that resist easy answers. Still, not everything fits neatly. Some carvings remain unclear. Some texts are incomplete. Some meanings are lost. And in one buried site, something unexpected appeared. A sealed chamber older than recorded history. Inside were no gods, no kings, no animals, a different kind of message. The carvings showed humans, pointing upward, not in worship, not in fear, but in warning. Beside them were symbols resembling stars, scratched out, erased, crossed away. No mention of gods. No sky beings. Only repetition. Only silenced. The sign of silence. One mark appeared again and again. A symbol historians interpret as absence, as erasure, as intentional forgetting, as if someone long ago wanted to make one thing clear. They did not come from above. And whatever truth once existed here, someone worked very hard to hide it. The mystery reframed. As torchlight flickered, the meaning shifted. This was never about aliens. It was about memory, about how humans explain the unknown, and how uncomfortable truths can be buried, not by invaders, but by time. The greatest mystery may not be what ancient people believed, but why we still struggle to believe in them. And that question refuses to die. Messages that stone never forgot. Long before books, before paper, before memory could be trusted, humans carved their fears and hopes into stone. Stone does not forget. That is why, thousands of years later, we still hear voices from civilizations that vanished long ago. But stone does not explain itself. It preserves shape, not meaning. And when the meaning is lost, imagination steps in. This is where many mysteries begin. When meaning fades, stories replace it. Ancient symbols were never meant to last forever. They were meant to be understood by the living. When languages died and cultures collapsed, the symbols remained, but their purpose did not. Later generations inherited shapes without instructions. And when humans face silence, they fill it with stories. This is not deception. It is instinct. The birthplace of the alien idea, the idea of ancient aliens, did not begin in the sky. It began in the gaps of history, in missing pages, in broken tablets, in half-erased carvings. When evidence is incomplete, imagination feels necessary. Not because humans want to lie, but because they want answers. The underground chamber revisited. After the sealed underground chamber was discovered, scholars debated its meaning for years. Some saw visitors from the heavens. Others saw astronomical symbols, calendars, and timekeeping systems. The truth was quieter and far more human. The carvings reflected how ancient people understood their world, not who visited it. Life lived close to disaster. Ancient civilizations lived one step away from collapse. Floods destroyed cities. Droughts starved populations. Storms erased generations. Every change mattered. So when progress appeared, better crops, stronger buildings, organized societies, it felt unnatural. People needed explanations, not scientific ones, emotional ones. Stories as tools of stability. Stories created order. They reduced fear. They made chaos understandable. If something powerful existed, it must have come from somewhere powerful. The sky became that place. Not because it was real, but because it was unreachable. Kings and the language of heaven. In Mesopotamia, kings claimed divine selection. This was not arrogance. It was survival. If people believed authority came from the heavens, rebellion felt impossible. Power wrapped itself in belief, not to deceive, but to control. Egypt and the sun's authority. In Egypt, pharaohs claimed descent from the sun, not because they believed they fell from the sky, but because the sun controlled life itself. Water, harvest, time. To rule the sun's children was to rule survival. This was symbolism, not science fiction. Costumes, rituals, and fear made visible. In the Americas, rulers wore animal and sky imagery. Masks, feathers, headdresses. This was not proof of visitors. It was theater. Ritual turned fear into authority. Symbols turned humans into something more. But symbols lose meaning when their culture disappears. When shapes begin to lie. Centuries later, only shapes remained. Helmets replaced crowns. Machines replaced symbols. Temples became launch pads. Not because ancient people meant it, but because modern viewers brought modern expectations. We explain the past using the present, and that distorts everything. The language of height and power. In ancient cultures, flying did not mean technology. It meant importance. Height symbolized power. Depth symbolized fear. That is why temples rose high. That is why graves were buried deep. When figures appeared in the sky, it meant status, not traveled. The comfort of a new myth. Over time, a new story appeared. One that was exciting, shocking, easy to sell. Aliens. It required no patience, no study, no respect for ancient intelligence. It replaced understanding with spectacle. The questions that wouldn't disappear. Still, questions remained. Why similar myths across continents? Why pyramids across the world? Why advanced astronomy? The answers were not mysterious. They were uncomfortable. Humans share fears. Humans share skies. Humans solve problems the same way. No visitors required. Knowledge, control, and erasure. Ancient texts reveal something darker. Knowledge was controlled. Writing restricted. Education limited. Truth owned by elites. If wisdom came from humans, it could be challenged. If it came from the sky, it could not. So divine origin was encouraged. Not aliens. Authority. The final warning in stone. Back in the chamber, researchers uncovered faint, nearly erased scenes. People working together, teaching children, building communities. No gods, no visitors, just humans. And one final carving stood apart. A civilization collapsing, not from invasion, but from forgetting who they were. Above it, a warning remained. When you give your greatness away, you lose it. The ancient alien mystery was never about the sky. It was about us. And what happens when we forget our own power? The listening desert. The desert was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that feels aware. Wind moved slowly across the sand, erasing footprints almost as soon as they appeared. The sun lowered, turning stone into gold, then shadow. This was the same sky ancient people studied every night. The same silence they faced, and the same questions they asked. Who are we? Where did we come from? And how much have we forgotten? Why the alien idea took root. The idea of aliens did not grow because of proof. It grew because of loss. Loss of records. Loss of teachers. Loss of continuity. When knowledge disappears, imagination rushes in to replace it. Not to deceive, but to cope. Knowledge was once fragile. Long ago, knowledge lived on the edge of extinction. There were no backups, no copies, no safe storage. Everything had to be remembered, spoken, or carved by hand. One fire could erase centuries. And fires were common. Destruction was not always accidental. Libraries burned. Cities collapsed. Empires fell. Sometimes through war. Sometimes through neglect. Sometimes by choice. When power changed hands, old knowledge became dangerous. New rulers erased what no longer served them. This was not random. It was historical pattern. Knowledge as power in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, reading sacred texts was restricted. Only priests were allowed access. Writing was power. Math was power. Timekeeping was power. Control of knowledge meant control of society. And power is rarely shared freely. Seeing results without process, later civilizations arrived to ruins. They saw pyramids, but not the planning. They saw calendars, but not the observation. They saw roads, but not the training. The process was gone. Only the result remained. And without context, people assumed help came from elsewhere. The uncomfortable truth. The truth was harder to accept. Humans had done this before, and forgotten how. Not because they were incapable, but because systems had collapsed. Time was the greatest tool. Ancient builders did not have machines. They had something slower. Time. Projects lasted lifetimes. Children were born into work they would never see finished. Fathers taught sons not for recognition, but for responsibility. Knowledge moved through families, not classrooms. Planning for centuries. Modern societies seek speed. Ancient societies planned for centuries. That difference changes everything. A pyramid was not rushed. A monument was not improvised. Each stone carried memory. Each mistake became instruction. A global pattern of human skill. Across the world, similar methods appeared. In China, massive projects were planned across generations. In the Andes, stone blocks were cut so precisely they still resist earthquakes. In Africa, ironworking developed early, agriculture adapted to harsh land, and trade crossed continents. In Europe, monuments tracked the sun with remarkable accuracy. These were not miracles. They were systems. When systems collapse, myths appear. Systems depend on people. When famine strikes, teachers die. When invasion comes, records vanish. When leaders fall, knowledge scatters. And when explanations disappear, myths take their place. The wrong question changed everything. Centuries later, explorers arrived. They did not ask, how did these people do this? They asked, who helped them? That single shift erased human agency. Builders became followers. Engineers became primitives. Civilizations became mysteries. Gods were ideas, not visitors. Ancient texts speak of gods. But gods were not visitors. They were forces. The sun was a god because it fed crops. Rivers were gods because they gave life. The sky was a god because it controlled time. To say the gods taught us meant nature taught us. But language changes. Poetry mistaken for technology. One ancient tablet speaks of a shining one descending from the sky, often cited as proof of aliens. The full text reveals metaphor. Shining meant wisdom. Descent meant learning. Laws meant social order. It was poetry, not a landing. But poetry fails without context. The record that changed everything. In the chamber beneath the desert, researchers found a list of names. Workers, planners, teachers, stonecutters, ordinary people. This was not the record of gods. It was the record of cooperation. Someone wanted to be remembered as human, and someone else wanted that memory erased. Because if people remembered what humans once achieved together, they might try again. The greatest mystery was never visitors from the sky. It was how much power humans once held, and how easily they forgot it. And the next would reveal the moment that forgetting became permanent. The quiet disappearance. The truth did not vanish in fire. It did not vanish in one great collapse. It disappeared quietly, one erased name at a time, one story rewritten, one memory altered to serve power instead of history. This was not destruction. It was editing. And this is where everything changed. New rulers on old foundations. Long after the great builders were gone, new rulers rose over old lands. They inherited monuments, not methods. They saw stone temples, roads, and vast structures, but they did not inherit the training, discipline, or patience that built them. To rule is easier than to build. To command is easier than to understand. So instead of learning, they replaced the price of order. When empires fall, chaos follows. But chaos never lasts forever. Someone always rises and says, "We will bring order." That promise always comes with a cost. In ancient times, that cost was memory. Knowledge as a threat. Knowledge was dangerous. It allowed people to question authority. It allowed workers to understand their value. It allowed societies to exist without divine rulers. So new powers made a decision. Some knowledge would survive. Some would disappear, not by accident, by policy. Rewriting human achievement. Across ancient Egypt, temples were sealed. Sacred schools were closed. Human achievement was rewritten as divine command. Builders became servants. Engineers became slaves. Systems became miracles, not because it was true, but because it was useful. The subtle shift in Mesopotamia. In Mesopotamia, early records spoke of trade, math, medicine, and astronomy. Later versions changed the language. Humans discovered this became, it was given to them. A subtle shift, but powerful. Because when knowledge comes from the sky, people stop searching within themselves. When metaphor becomes literal, centuries passed. Languages changed. Symbols lost meaning. Metaphor hardened into belief. A teacher became a god. A lesson became a miracle. A journey became a descent from the sky. Story replaced structured. The modern misunderstanding. When later civilizations uncovered ancient records, confusion followed. How could they know this? How could they build this? Instead of studying lost systems, many chose easier answers. Not evidence. Imagination. This is where the alien story truly begins. Not in ancient history, but in modern misunderstanding. Archaeology and bias. The 19th and 20th centuries uncovered buried civilizations. Cities older than textbooks. Tools more precise than expected. Structures beyond assumptions. But archaeology was shaped by bias. Many early scholars could not accept that non-European civilizations achieved this independently. So achievements were minimized or explained away. Drama over truth. Some said they copied from others. Some said they were guided. Some said they were helped by beings beyond Earth. Not because evidence demanded it, but because drama travels faster than truth. The quiet evidence. Every serious excavation told the same story. Worker villages beside monuments. Tools beside stone. Food remains showing organized labor. Medical evidence showing healed injuries. Not slaves. Not miracles. Communities. Professionals. Humans who believed their work mattered. The myth's fatal weakness. The alien myth could never answer one question. Why would advanced beings cross the universe to teach humans how to stack stone? Why give calendars, but not engines? Why leave knowledge, but no tools? No machines? No trace? Silence became louder than the story. Science answers the claims. Stone was tested. Tool marks analyzed. Construction methods recreated. Again and again, the result was the same. Human hands. Human planning. Human error. Human correction. No unknown materials. No impossible physics. Just effort. On a scale modern society rarely attempts. The digital age rewrites history again. Then came the internet. Old theories returned without context. Speculation became content. Questions became claims. Claims became beliefs. But belief is not evidence. Historians stayed cautious, not claiming total knowledge, but ruling out falsehoods. And aliens were one of them. The final turning point. The ancient builders encoded knowledge, not for the sky, but for the future. In stone, in myth, in architecture, the pyramids were not messages to aliens. They were messages to humanity, saying, "We were here. We understood the world. Do not forget what we learned." But we did. And in a damaged manuscript, one final warning remained. If the people forget how they built the world, they will believe it was built by others. Forgetting was not an accident. It was a choice. And the next will reveal who benefited most from that forgetting, and why human greatness was buried deeper than any stone ever laid. Not in the sky. The final secret was never hidden in the sky. It was never waiting among the stars. It was buried in plain sight, under our feet. For generations, humans looked upward for answers, while standing on the truth the entire time. Time moves faster than memory. Long after the last monument was sealed, the world changed. Rivers shifted their paths. Climates hardened. Empires rose and collapsed like waves. Each collapse erased something precious. Not gold, not power, but understanding. How civilizations really die. Civilizations do not fall in one night. They fade. Slowly. Silently. One skill lost. One teacher gone. One generation taught what to believe, but not how to think. And when that happens, even the greatest achievements begin to look impossible. Egypt did not forget stone. Ancient Egypt did not fall because people forgot how to build pyramids. It fell because the systems that supported builders collapsed. Food networks failed. Trade routes broke. Central authority weakened. You cannot plan for eternity when you are fighting for tomorrow. A pattern across the world. The same story repeats. Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, the Maya world, Rome, China. Great civilizations were not destroyed by ignorance. They were destroyed by pressure, environmental stress, political conflict, resource exhaustion, and human pride. When societies shrink, they simplify. Complex systems are abandoned. Specialized knowledge becomes rare. Skills turn into myths. People remember the results, but forget the process. They see finished stone, but not the thousands of steps it took to place it. How mystery is born. This is where mystery begins. Not from aliens, not from magic, but from distance. Time creates gaps, and the human mind hates gaps, so it fills them. The death of patience. Modern life is built on speed. Push a button, get power. Tap a screen, get answers. Ancient civilizations worked in decades, in lifetimes, in generations. A pyramid could take 30 years. A cathedral, 300. A road system, centuries. Without patience, scale feels impossible. The earth answers back. But archaeologists kept digging, and the earth kept answering. Near the Great Pyramid, they found workers' towns, bakeries, sleeping quarters, medical tools, bones that healed, proof of care, not slavery. Pay records carved into stone. Work crews named proudly. The friends of Khufu. The drunkards of Menkaure. These were not nameless laborers. They were skilled workers. They were proud. They were human. The tools tell the truth. Tool marks confirm the story. Copper chisels, stone hammers, wooden sleds, ropes, physics, friction, time. Nothing unknown. Nothing impossible. Just effort, multiplied by organization. The stars as tools, not gods. The famous alignments had explanations. The stars were not worshipped because they were mysterious. They were trusted because they were reliable. The sky was a clock, a calendar, a map. Aligning monuments to stars was not religion. It was precision. It was science. Before the word existed. Real human problems. Ancient builders were not waiting for rescue. They were solving problems. How to move weight, how to measure angles, how to feed thousands, how to plan beyond one lifetime. These are not alien questions. They are human ones. The uncomfortable truth. Here is the hardest truth. The reason the alien story survived. If ancient humans built all this, then so can we. And if we can, we must ask why we no longer do. What we forgot to believe. Ancient civilizations believed they were part of a chain. They inherited wisdom and were responsible for passing it on. They built for memory, not profit, for continuity, not headlines. When that belief died, mystery replaced responsibility, and mystery became entertainment. The final question: the pyramids were not built to impress gods. They were built to prove something to humans. That order can rise from chaos. That knowledge can outlast kings. That unity can bend stone and time. We stand today where ancient people once stood, surrounded by tools, by power, by choice. And the question they left us was never, did others help us? It was, will you remember who you are? Because if we forget, someday, someone will stand among our ruins and wonder the same thing about us.